Good evening, grade 5, parents and families. Before we get started officially, I would like to just test whether or not you are able to hear me and see me. I am on just a few seconds of a delay. So why don't we get started by posting in the chat, which we will use for our forum tonight, just a quick hello so that I know that you are both seeing me and hearing me with enough volume. And again, I'm on just a couple seconds of a delay, so it will just take me here to a couple seconds. There you go. Hi, Vanessa. Vanessa is officially the first hello. Good to see you. Hi, everybody. Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I am here today representing the leadership team of Beverly Middle School. My name is Kate Twombly. I am the grade 5 assistant principal. And tonight I am hoping to be with you as we start to answer some of your burning questions when we think about getting ready for the start of school for your students. And of course, in true technology fashion, my iPad, which I lovingly set up right as I started to get ready to come on, glitched, and now I am presenting to you both on my laptop and my phone. So that's why I really wanted to check the bandwidth. Thank you all so much for saying hello. Thank you. And thanks for being here tonight. Whether or not you're watching this at home live or on a recording tomorrow or over the weekend, we will be sharing the link to you. I hope that it finds you well and also staying cool because it is pretty hot out there tonight. So I'm hoping that you guys have found some relief tonight as we meet together and start to talk about the school year. Tonight is really just for grade 5 only. I know that there was a Facebook post that a few people got a little bit confused about. So I just want to clarify, tonight is really for grade 5 families, parents, and guardians, kids too, if they want to watch. I'm sure they have better things to do right now at 7 o'clock, but everything that I'm presenting to you guys is something that I would also present to them. And so again, just to clarify, this is a presentation really specifically talking about grade 5. I also ask that we follow the norm that nobody asks personal questions about their own students in this forum. The reason that we're using this YouTube forum and our StreamYard platform is that we don't have to limit or worry about the capacities of a platform like Zoom or Google Meet. And typically this ends up being a little bit less glitchy. With that, the way that we can best communicate is through this chat. So if you're, please, interrupt me, ask questions, ask me to clarify things. I will have a more formal question and answer period at the end, but certainly if you need some clarification in the moment, I'm monitoring the chat as we go here. But please, if it is something that is specific to your family, to your student, go ahead and email me and we will speak more privately for those types of questions. The other piece tonight is that we're not going to dig too deeply into curriculum. There will be a curriculum night coming up in September. We have not officially scheduled that yet, but late September will be our curriculum night. And I don't want to take away everything that the teachers are going to share with you in September. So tonight is really about just kind of policies and procedures, things that you can expect as your students get ready for next week, and also things that hopefully will put your fears and anxieties to rest as parents so that we can all go into next week feeling really comfortable and knowing just what to expect. The other piece to tonight that we won't be covering necessarily is regarding COVID-19 protocols that have been recently updated, just as recently as yesterday at 4 o'clock. There was some recent guidance put out by Jesse. So that being said, we will not be digging into deeply into some of those protocols. I will highlight a few of them, but much more information will be coming out to you from Lisa Oliver and Dr. Trochak regarding some, different updates to kind of some of the physical distancing, such as at lunchtime, and more information about the mask mandate. So that will be coming from them. Also, following this presentation, there will be some follow-up communications regarding some of the transportation and traffic flow platforms, procedures that we are still collaborating with Beverly Public Schools on the whole, and Beverly Department of Public Works, and the police department, so that we are making sure that your mornings are not are as streamlined and smooth as possible in the streets around our schools. So with that being said, let's dig in. And first, I want to start with some introductions. So again, my name is Kate Twombly. I'm the grade 5 assistant principal. I join you as I've spent my entire career in the Beverly Public Schools, starting as a paraprofessional right out of college, and then working my way into a variety of teaching and coaching and administrative roles. I now am just assigned to grade 5 as the grade 5 assistant principal. So I've been telling your students as I meet them, I am your person. I'm your go-to. And I hope that you take me up on that offer as a parent as well. I am joined as you can see, by a large and amazing leadership team. Lisa Oliver is the principal of Beverly Middle School. Miss Jamie Norton is the assistant principal that works with grade 6. Miss Erica Pasquarelli is the assistant principal working with just grade 8. And Mr. Greg Twombly is the assistant principal working with grade 8. No relation is usually how we introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm Greg Twombly. Hi, I'm Kate Twombly, no relation. Lots of rumors abound that we are related or married or brother and sister. None of them are true. We've only known each other in the capacity of this role for a couple of years. I met him for the first time in his interview, but we are certainly a very family-like team, and we work very collaboratively and as a team on everything. So I'm very lucky and very blessed to introduce you to my colleagues. We also have a really stellar tribe of secretaries and custodians and support staff throughout the building, beyond just our teaching and leadership staff. So you will probably most likely interact with our main office secretarial staff, our clerks. We have them in the main office, and the main office is where you will most likely be coming in should you need to dismiss your child for something, for an appointment. If you are bringing your child in tardy and you want to walk them in because they had an appointment or they had kind of a slow start at home. It's also where you would be checking in for any meetings that you are attending or signing in as a visitor. So really everything, the hub of communication and welcome is out of our main office. We also ask that if you are dismissing your child, or if you are going to be bringing your child late for a planned appointment, that you communicate that to the office. Along with this presentation, when I send a big bulk email tomorrow, and for those of you who were able to attend the open house last night and yesterday, there's kind of an everything you need to know, one pager front and back that has some detailed information, such as how do I dismiss my child? How do I bring them in? How do I bring them in late? Right now, we do have a QR code system for dismissal. We also have a paper dismissal system. But if you know you're going to be dismissing, we do ask that you walk in and bring your phone with you to access the QR code so that we can have a touchless dismissal. So that's a feature that we just started using last year. And it's one of those silver linings of COVID that worked out really well, and we had a beautiful record of the comings and goings. This presentation I will also be sharing with you tomorrow in its entirety, along with a recording of tonight's forum. This presentation includes many beautiful slides of all of the staff so that you can get to know us a little bit more as people. So I join you not only as an assistant principal and educator, but also as a Beverly resident and Beverly mom. I have 2 little girls who attend the Ayers Royal Side Elementary School, And so tonight I'm speaking to you all not only as an administrator at the middle school, but also as a parent of my own students, and knowing that it is very hard to send your baby off to a brand new building for those of you who have not done that yet. And I know that it is an awesome building. It is large, but tonight I am here to hopefully reassure you that we like to keep the fifth graders small, and small meaning in small groups, but also developmentally still at their age. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But I'm talking to you now really as a parent. I am also joined this year. I am so blessed to be joined by Mrs. Janet Dwyer, who is going to be your student school adjustment counselor for the next 3 years. We have started a new model at our building where the school adjustment counselor will start with your child in grade 5, rise with them through grade 6 and 7. And then we have onboarded a new position this year that will be an 8-9 looper. So whomever your child has in grade 8 as a school adjustment counselor will actually rise with your child to the high school. The actual staff member will go to the high school for a year to help acclimate them to the BHS building. We felt that that was really important for transition and for supporting students. And so they will get to know Ms. Dwyer very well. Ms. Dwyer will hand them off to whomever their 8-9 looper will be. Every other year it will change. And then that 8-9 looper will rise with them to BHS. So that will be, I think, a really nice feature of support for our students moving forward. We also have some teacher slides coming up, but first let's talk about where they all are. Hopefully you were able to attend one of the open houses either back in June or yesterday. The neighborhoods are how we affectionately name our wings. So we have neighborhood 1, which is that first neighborhood that is right where you come in on the first floor. Neighborhood 2 is the second neighborhood down on the right, and neighborhood 3 following that. The neighborhoods are really just kind of how we refer to a lot of things. So we'll say to the students, okay, let's go to your neighborhood door, or okay, what neighborhood are you in? So it becomes just one of those terms that is part of our culture. And that rises all the way up through 8th grade. We always refer to their hallways as their neighborhoods. The structure of the teams themselves, I think, is definitely something that makes people say, huh? So I want to spend a minute before I introduce the teaching staff to really talk about what we mean by the 2-person teams. So you guys are used to being at an elementary school and in an elementary school model. In elementary school, a student is assigned to a teacher, and that's their teacher for the year. And they stay in that classroom unless they go out for specials. But really, that's their home base. So when this building was being designed and when the thought process and the brainstorming started for how we wanted to create a new learning environment for students, one of the things that everyone felt was really at the core, and you can kind of see it even just in the types of furniture that we have, is one centered around collaboration and flexible grouping. And so that really is at the core of how we model our groupings in grade 5. So your student will be assigned to a homeroom kind of as a placeholder in Aspen. In Aspen, it will say one of the 2 teachers' room numbers as their homeroom. We think about that as kind of just again, a placeholder, because when your student is assigned to a team, that's really what they are assigned to, a team. The team is where they stay for their whole day in their neighborhood on team. That's another thing that we say a lot is on team. We're going on team. So what we mean by on team is that we have a group of about 50 students, and we want to make some really strong, collaborative, complementary groupings of students. But we also want kids to get to know a larger group from just their elementary colleagues. So what we do is we meet them and we kind of shake them up and put them into one of two groups. Those groups will change kind of flexibly, and grade 5 teachers do a really nice job getting student voice and choice to name their groups very often. So sometimes they'll make two groups to start the year, and it will be peanut butter and jelly or something kind of fun that the kids pick to recognize who those two groupings are. And then over the course of probably the first 6 weeks of school, they'll be working within that group of about 20 to 24, 25 kids. And the teachers will get to know those groups and how they interact with the kids that are in that grouping. And then at some point after a little while, they'll shake up the groups again and make maybe 2 new groupings. Or they'll say, oh my gosh, this grouping's really great, but we want to make a few changes, talk to the kids, think who maybe wants to branch out a little bit. So it's all done very collaboratively, and also with a lot of strategic planning and notice. The kids, it's not like the kids show up on a Thursday and they were in one grouping and now they're like in another grouping. It's done very strategically. And it's really actually a luxury for teachers to be able to mix personalities up in a variety of ways over the course of the year. So what you see in Aspen as the home room, you might see change as we start to think about these really good, solid, flexible groupings. And what you also might notice is that the whole team goes into one. So we're still trying to figure out in Aspen how it would reflect how we want it to reflect. But I figured if I just explained it to you, that would probably also help. So that's really how those teams and homerooms are put together. What you should also know is that I did not go lightly into the groupings for the teams. Your former 4th grade teachers gave me lists of kids that worked really well together. And I was able to honor all of those groupings that they thought were really solid groupings. And so I really lean on the grade 4 teachers who can tell me who works well together, who might need a break from each other in order to make some really solid groupings and teams going into grade 5. Every team does have all 5 elementary schools plus some transfer in students on team. So it's a new eclectic, cool grouping that I think all of your students are going to really find some new friendships and new relationships in. So neighborhood 1, we have the cheetahs, the tigers, and the pumas. I'm not going to go through and read all of these beautiful slides. I'm just going to kind of go quickly through them. But the pumas are both Miss Cindric and Mrs. O'Malley. They are also supported by a language-based support teacher, Mrs. Davis. The tigers are Mrs. Pogoyo, Mrs. Mione. Again, you'll have this, so you'll get to read all of these over again with your students. I'll send everything tomorrow morning. And support staff, Mrs. Brewer, who works with our EL students. On the cheetahs, we have Mrs. Regan, formerly known as Mrs. Orlando, or Miss Orlando, and Mrs. Curry, formerly known as Miss Elliott, and they also were formerly known as the River Cat. So they had a lot of name changes this summer. They had some really awesome summers, both got married, and we all kind of thought, well, why not throw a new name out there too? And also cheetahs is easier to find cheetah print things for. So that was also, I think, part of the decision process. That team is also supported by one of our special educators, Devin Carr, and Mr. Mike Collins. In neighborhood 2, we have the Wildcats, the Jaguars, and the Lions. The Wildcats are Mrs. Hopkins, Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. McDonald, and on the Lions, we have Mrs. Hall, Mrs. Knowles, and on the Jaguars, we have Mrs. Russo, Mrs. Green, and Miss Maynard. Also supported in neighborhood 2, Mrs. Scherer is going to be working as a float teacher who will help students on both the Jaguars and the Wildcats. And in neighborhood 3, we have the Ocelots. The Ocelots are Mrs. Aylward, Mrs. Lampert, Mr. Swinnick, Mrs. Churko, and Miss Cross. So again, I'm going to be sharing this presentation with you. They have written a lot about themselves so that you get to know them as people and beyond just the classroom. And I don't even know the right words. I am so honored to work with such a phenomenal group of professionals. We have a lot of fun and we work really hard. And I think that I hope you trust me when I say that this is going to be an awesome year in grade 5. We have an amazing team and we're really looking forward to working together and finding opportunities for both rigor and work, but also joy. And a few dance parties along the way too. All right. I think the first thing that I really wanted to say tonight, and that's something that I think all of the grade 5 staff has been wanting to just kind of say out loud, both to parents, but also just to acknowledge it to each other. We are, just because the 5th grade students are now at the Beverly Middle School, does not mean that something magically happened and that they all developmentally changed just because their building changed. And what I mean by that is that we acknowledge and appreciate and support the idea and the notion that they are still developmentally 5th graders. They're still little. And that is why our main goals are keeping them both separate as a 5th grade. And that's why we've designed the floors the way we have at the middle school. When I say separate, I truly mean the first floor is really kind of like its own elementary school for just 5th graders. We very seldom have any real movement from other grades going through the first floor unless they're escorted by a teacher heading to a Globe Lab. So I truly mean that the 5th graders are separated on that first floor for their day. Anywhere they go within the building, they're always escorted by a staff member. We build up to things like going to the nurse by yourself, going even to the bathroom by yourself. You know, that's something that even in the first few weeks of school, teachers will go to the door and make sure that they have kind of that route to the bathroom planned out and everybody's good. It doesn't take very long for students to get comfortable with those routines, but we acknowledge that students are nervous. This is a big building. It's a big change. And to the second bullet point, we want to acknowledge and keep them little because they are. Developmentally, they are still in a place of growing and exploration and play. And we acknowledge that and support that as a staff and just want you to know that that is really our mentality and mindset. So we always fall back on a responsive classroom text called Yardsticks. A quote from there that I included here is know where they are, see where they are, prepare for where they're going. And that truly is our mindset when we think about how we teach and onboard our 5th graders to the middle school. That also comes with a partnership with parents. And there's a lot of different ways. I think very often parents will say, well, what do I need to know? Like, tell me what I need to know to be, a middle school parent. And so here are kind of 3 things that come up as an administrator working with your child. These are things that in the past have come up as barriers, roadblocks, and things to navigate through with family kind of together in partnership. One is before and after school expectations. So I always, whenever parents ask me for advice on before or after school plans for their students, meaning your student might come to you and say, so can I stay after school today and you pick me up a little bit late because everybody's meeting on the turf to play? That's never a good idea. I'm just Just saying. It's really never a good idea. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. So usually what I will often say is follow the same mentality that you would either in June or the summer of this past year, or if what you would say yes to if they were still housed in an elementary school. Again, not a lot has changed developmentally just because they're in a bigger building. We find that sometimes grade 5 students developmentally still have a hard time navigating some of those before and after school interactions if they don't have a plan or a place that they're supposed to be going and checking into. Meaning if they have kind of an open-ended after school plan where they don't really have to check in with anyone right after school right away, that's where the opportunity exists for them to be exposed to older grade level students. And it typically happens when students are either congregating or hanging out, coming early, staying late, and really just kind of not getting off and going on their dismissal plan. So we encourage students not to hang on campus. We really try to clear the campus before we go back in and begin our afternoon work as a leadership staff. But I do want to share that and impart that with you guys, because you will hear things like, well, everybody's doing it. Everybody's hanging around the school after school. That the expectation is that they do leave the campus after school. And that tends to be a place where sometimes we have kids that are having a hard time navigating what they should do next because they might not have an expectation for their after school plan. Also building a digital citizenship, and that's particularly around cell phones and technology. There are many students in grade 5 that do not yet have a cell phone, and they navigate their 5th grade year perfectly fine. We really leave that all up to each individual family. We acknowledge that many of you want your student to have a cell phone for safety reasons. Absolutely, that is cool with us and fine. But cell phones do go off and are put into lockers right at the start of school, and they are not permitted to come out until after school has been dismissed, so at the end of the day. The reason for that is that they can be a distraction, and we also want to maintain kind of just our focus on our rigorous work. The kids have their iPads, so anything creative, like taking a picture or something that they would want to do during the day, can certainly be satisfied using their iPad. As far as the use of technology, we also ask that parents help partner with helping us to monitor any use of social media, texting, emailing. I will say that I hate to be the first person to tell someone that their student is using technology in perhaps an inappropriate way. I think sometimes in grade 5, their students become very quickly much savvier than maybe even parents can keep up with. So I'm just sharing that knowledge that as an assistant principal, it's always good to know exactly what apps and social media channels your student might be exploring, and make sure that everything. Oh, thank you, Vanessa. Yes, they're going to be distributed next week. All iPads will be distributed next week. So those are actually waiting at the school. Your students will get them the first day. They will be using them in school to start, and then eventually those will be hopefully traveling back and forth after school. Certainly, if you have a need for technology to come home, perhaps you have an after-school club need for your student, like they're attending a therapy appointment after school, or something that you would really rather the iPad travel, please just contact me and we can be flexible with that. Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you. All right. One of the big items that everybody wants to know about is arrival. So we have heard from parents, and I, as a parent myself, understand that the morning rush and trying to get everyone to their places and then also get to work on time can be very challenging. We are working right now on, we actually just posted and are currently hiring some of our own staff who will eventually be working outside to help with early arrivals from 8 to 8:30. So that's something that we have heard from parents that there is a real need for. And so we are responding by actually paying some of our staff to come early and be floating around the campus so that if there are early arrivals, everyone has supervision. Again, going back to that idea of, showing up either early or trying to stay late on the turf, it's always good to have people around when students are arriving early so that everyone feels safe and everyone feels supervised. That will not be in place for the first week of school. We will send some email communication when that 8 o'clock start time will be in place. But we are working on that. That's something that we've heard from a lot of you very recently about. And we want to respond and work with you and partner with you on that. So for next week, and until you get that email that the 8 o'clock is good to go, 8:15 is when the first doors open. The first floor cafeteria doors on the turf and outside amphitheater side are open at 8:15, and that's where students can enter for breakfast. We ask that they come in and sit for breakfast. At 8:30, the neighborhood doors that are at the end of each neighborhood on the opposite side of the building begin to open for students to report straight to homeroom. So for the first day, it will be that number that's listed in Aspen, and then we will communicate to your student and to you when the flexible groupings shift and change. Typically, they will try to do that for the following Tuesday after Labor Day. Also, at 8:30, that's typically when buses begin to arrive. So they start to arrive, they enter through those same cafeteria doors. If your student is coming by bus and they would like to eat breakfast, they just come right back, they just come right in, and we have plenty of breakfast seats. The cafeteria will undergo yet another facelift per the recent guidance. We will be increasing some of our physical distancing for all meals. And those tables, we really had to get out of storage and kind of figure out what we were going to do with them. So that's why they were in the first floor caf for the open house yesterday. Well, I think they were there by last night, but those will be kind of reshuffled a little bit, and we will be utilizing some alternative seating for inclement weather eating, particularly at lunch. Typically, breakfast is done inside, but our numbers are low enough that there is typically 10 to 12 feet between kids in the cafeteria for breakfast. It's not a full house. At 8:45, that is when attendance is first taken by their team teachers. So by 8:45, we're kind of walking around from 8:30 to 8:45, making sure everybody is where they need to be. And then at 8:45, we take attendance. If you're having a late start, if somebody's running late and you're here at 9, or stuff happens to me too. If it's beyond 8:45, we just ask that the kids come through the front door. Very often we just say, okay, go down to class, and it's not a late arrival unless it's starting to get closer to the 9 o'clock hour. But we do just close those neighborhood doors for safety's sake. And then we ask that we siphon everybody through that front door, and then we can give late passes should they need late passes. Very similar to how the elementary model works. Dismissal starts at about 2:45, and it really is a long process. We start with our students that ride special education transportation at around 2:45 so that we can kind of stagger who's in the hallway so that we don't just ring a bell and everybody runs out at the same time, because that would be a terrible idea. So we kind of start our dismissal procedures. We make our announcements at 2:45. Students are then dismissed by grade, and fifth grade is typically last. So please, if you are waiting somewhere and your student hasn't come out yet, please don't panic. We are very conscious of the traffic flow, and so sometimes we will hold grades, speed things along depending on kind of how the traffic flow is for that particular afternoon. Sometimes if there's a late bus arrival, that might throw things off. We are the last bus run, and we never dismiss buses until everybody has cleared. So for those of you that might be waiting for a bus student to arrive home, you're more than welcome to reach out to transportation. That's also, that number is on the kind of everything you need to know sheet. You're more than welcome to reach out to them and say, hey, where's my kid's bus? And they're going to tell you. But especially for the first couple of weeks of school, bus routes can go a little bit late as everybody's getting used to the new routines. And again, being the last pickup and the last drop off for the whole district. Sometimes if a bus is a little bit late because of an elementary issue, and then that bus gets a little late for BHS, and then we're inevitably a little late because of being the last. So please don't panic, and also don't sit with anxiety. Give a phone call to transportation, give a phone call to us. We usually would be able to tell you in 2 seconds and put all of your fears to rest. Also, the biggest thing about dismissal is to make a plan with your student. Very often, if we do have a student that gets separated from a parent at the end of the day, and a parent is, and they're not where they thought that they were going to be meeting, it's due to kind of a family plan that might not have been firmed up. So they'll say, well, they told me that I was going to walk to maybe over to McEwen, but then they also said that if it was raining, maybe they would pick me up. And that's usually when parents and their students don't connect right at dismissal time. So the clearer the plan, the better. You can always call or shoot an email to your kids' team teachers. They're on their email, or shoot an email to me. I'm on my email all day if something has drastically changed in your dismissal plan, and I can just walk down and let them know. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Some arrival and dismissal tips and tricks. These are kind of those things that the upperclassmen, and for those of you with older students, you kind of already know, but we have a couple of new pieces to this year that are exciting. So as you've probably heard, arrival and dismissal at the middle school, it can be a little time consuming if you do a live drop off right up to the building. So some things that we are going to ask you guys to do, some tips and tricks, is particularly around dropping off in the morning and picking up in the afternoon, and where to do that. So we do ask that if you are dropping off and want to do an on-campus drop-off, that you start at Balch Street at the rear entrance of the school, the Cummings Center side. You follow kind of the route around the building, and as soon as you see an open spot of pavement or curbing, if you will, you can pull over and let those students off. Very often what happens is parents will wait until they're right outside the door of the student's neighborhood and drop them off there. And what that ends up doing, especially for students in neighborhood 1, is creating a backup. And it can be really challenging to overcome that backup once that happens once or twice during a drop off. So we ask that you kind of get used to finding a spot on campus that is comfortable for your student to get off and then walk a little bit to their neighborhood door, or if they're coming early, to breakfast. But we also have a few options for you. So Beverly Golf and Tennis has graciously opened up their side parking lot to the right. It's the kind of the overflow parking lot over to the right. And it's a kind of a dirt parking lot, but if you pull in there, you can drop, and there's going to be 8 crossing guards on the periphery of Beverly Middle School. And they are putting in a light right there too. So even for another added level of safety. And so big groups of students will be walking from Beverly Golf and Tennis. Another option is to drop at the back of the high school near the tennis courts. And those parking spots are open, and there will be places that you can either drop and go, or also park and pick up at the end of the day. Biking is a very, very popular option at Beverly Middle School, and we encourage it. It's great to see kids arriving by bike, but we do ask that you please help keep the kids safe along with us. Helmets and locks are helmets are required, locks are encouraged. We have plenty of places to lock up bikes, but there is certainly, I think, a need for a helmet reminder. We've been having, in partnership with the Beverly Police Department, a lot of opportunities. We had a BMX bike trick rider come last year and talk about the importance of helmet safety. We've been partnering with a local group of Beverly bicyclists who are going to also help kind of kick off some helmet and bike safety around our building and on the streets. So look for more of that, but certainly it is a law in Beverly. We have an ordinance that kids are to have bike helmets on and be riding safely. And so we are going to be carrying out those expectations as well while on campus. More will come from Mrs. Oliver in detail this weekend about rolling drop-offs and pickups, but you guys kind of just got the preview, if you will. So more will be coming out more formally this weekend. All right, supplies. You guys were already provided a recommended list via an Aspen email. For anybody that's joining us tonight, that has since, probably it was maybe end of July, could have been, no, might have been August, when that email went out. If you have not seen that supply list, not to worry, because tomorrow a team specific list will come out. 99% of the items are what are on the recommended list, but there are certain things that help certain teams organize student work. Some teachers like the red and the blue folder for certain things, that kind of stuff. You have fifth graders, so you know what I'm talking about. So some of those little team specific lists contain some items. I will be sending those lists out again tomorrow morning with this bulk email that will have all of these things included, including a recording of tonight. If you need assistance with any supplies, please ask. We have a ton of supplies in partnership with Beverly Bootstraps, and also with some gracious donations from Staples and some of our families. We have backpacks, we have everything. We have everything. So please just ask. We have everything that you might need. As far as backpacks, I know that we used to, at the middle school, say that students were required a cinch size backpack. We can get a pretty good size backpack in those lockers, even though they are small. We do encourage limiting stuff. When I visited your student schools back in the spring, I said to them, please don't bother buying all of those things, the tchotchkes that go in the lockers. One, the lockers are small, and two, they're not magnetic. So the chandelier from Target with the throw rug for the locker, which they really do sell, are not necessary and really won't fit. So we can get a good size backpack in there. Certainly like a pair of winter boots or a coat. If you have a really big fluffy coat, we also have hooks in the classroom. So that is nothing to stress out about. If a student has stuff that doesn't fit in locker, we just throw it on a hook in the classroom. So they will, I'm sure, come winter, know exactly what will and won't fit within their lockers. And again, it doesn't have to be a cinch sack, but a smaller backpack, really, there's not much that travels day to day. So they really don't need a whole big backpack because there's just not a lot that goes back and forth. What do students do? What do they need? It's really just a snack, peanut, tree nut free snack. Something that they typically will eat while they're kind of working during a literacy or math block. So something kind of compact and easy to have kind of on the go. Even though I've seen kids kind of put out a spread of hummus and cheese and like that, whatever your kid is comfortable with. But honestly, it doesn't need to be, too big. Lunch, you can bring a lunch from home, or this year we do have free lunch provided to all students through some funding that we have secured through the end of this year. Shout out to Christina Leal in Food Services. She's awesome. And so the only thing that will be different this year is that kids will enter their PIN. We will be setting up several different kiosks within our cafeterias, and kids will be entering a PIN. So just to kind of track who's eating what and how many lunches are being served. We do ask that you bring a refillable water bottle. We have filtered water filling stations in our building. And no, not everyone has a Hydro Flask. Some of you might be told by your students that everybody in middle school has a Hydro Flask. They don't. Any sort of water bottle works perfectly fine. Masks are mandated this year, and you might also pack a couple of masks in the backpack for a change, but we also have plenty, and actually the white masks, the paper masks that we have tend to be preferred for some of by some of our students, but we do ask. We go through a lot of masks at the middle school, so we do, as best as you can, we do ask that you send in masks for your children. And if it is traveling back and forth, a charged iPad just makes life easier for your student. So if you have a charger at home, once that iPad starts to travel back and forth, it definitely does help if you are able to help us charge that up at home. And then when they come in, they're off and ready to learn. A lot of people have been asking about clubs. So clubs are very popular. And I think there's also this intrigue for grade 5 because it's new, right? They are all free. They run after school on different days of the week. We will be rolling these things out probably mid to late September, sometimes early October. They are all run by BMS staff. So it's kind of like how smooth our year gets running as when the start for clubs is. This year, we're going to start a digital hub, a website devoted to just our clubs and how to find the information for our clubs. But we also announce clubs on Homeward Bound using our digital signage, which are all of our TVs in the building. We make announcements in the morning and after school. Homeroom teachers also review the announcements. So there's a lot of opportunities for students. All they have to do is show up to the first meeting. So if they all of a sudden it gets announced that there's going to be a chess club. Chess club's going to meet on the 4th floor in Miss Woodbell's room on Thursdays. They just make a plan with you on how they're going to get picked up after the club. Usually they run about an hour. More information will come out with the advertisement for the club, and then they just stay and then they go home. Typically we do have a late bus. I don't have final word on whether or not we'll be offering that this year. We were not able to offer it last year, but I'm not sure if we have that this year, but that does sometimes become a popular option for kids that are staying for clubs. I had a parent ask me the other day, well, what do you need from us? Like, what can we do? And I think really the best thing that you guys can do is just be involved. There's a lot of PTO and volunteer opportunities that we're hoping to get running this year. If you can reach out and stay connected through either Homeward Bound or social media or email, even something that you think is little and like, oh, my student had a really bad weekend and I just want to let you know, like they might not be themselves this week. Those types of connections are really, really important for us as teachers and staff. And also it just helps us support and build relationships with your children. The other thing, I'll say it again, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. We can really use your help helping us adhere to expectations around cell phones. The other piece to this is we ask that if you need to get in touch with your students during the day, that you please call the office. We can always get your child and have them take a phone call from home. Please don't text or email or, try to get in contact with them a different way. The easiest and fastest way is to call the main office and ask to be connected with your child. And we will call your student down. We have a phone that's dedicated just to kids in the main office. They can take the phone call and then we wipe the phone down after everybody's used it. And that's usually the easiest and best way to get a message to your student. So if you can help us help them adhere to the cell phone and technology policy, that is a huge, 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 huge help. Another thing that people have been asking a lot about is a day in the life, especially because Aspen doesn't necessarily reflect what we've been saying we look like. So I want to clarify that for you. Aspen is one way that we house all of the student information in our building and in our district. So the way that you see things in Aspen, it doesn't necessarily reflect what it feels like as a 5th grade student. So I have created a sample 5th grade student schedule just to kind of walk through it with you. And what you'll see is that it's very much like elementary school. There's really not a lot of differences other than this GA1 and GA2. And you can see there's a lot of questions about that. And I will get to that very shortly. So Kids come in, they have morning meeting. We call it advisory as well, because it really is that. It's a time to connect. It's a time to get together and talk to each other. We also then go into what is an academic block. So back at the elementary school, we called this literacy block. We called it math block. Now we're calling an academic block. They're going to be in either humanities, which is social studies and ELA combined, or math science combined. The reason that we've done that is we've created units of study that really help us get a lot of curriculum standards in at the same time. So we're doing things cross-curricularly and making sure that if we are teaching our social studies standards, we're also teaching our reading and writing standards, for example. So they go into an academic block, and then at 10:15, they go off for their first global app. Global applications is a fancy way of saying specials, or not quite electives, because there's some choice to our global apps, but not as much as we'd like to embed yet. So global applications, the first one that's listed on your student schedule, is our core offering. They will be part of a STEM class, they will be part of a wellness class, and they will be part of a fine arts class this year. So that being said, those are our global apps one. Then they go to lunch. After lunch, we have recess, and then we go into our next academic block. At 1:30, a couple of different things happen, and that's what we're calling Global Apps 2. We're actually piloting this year some new ideas for our global applications classes. So you will see some classes that will be an extension of what they had that morning. So if they had STEM in the morning, the afternoon STEM offering for some of our students is going to be an extension where they dig into different things like robotics or CAD, things that we are hoping to include in our next program of studies that we are writing for the 22-23. I can't believe I'm saying that, 22-23 school year. So you'll see a lot of different samplings in GA2. The other thing that happens in GA2 is students can elect into band, chorus, or strings. So if your student is taking band, chorus, or strings, they actually go out of that GA2 and they're going to go down and take their band, chorus, and strings. The final block of the day is an academic block 3. And we are going to be designing a lot of acceleration, extension classes for that 2:15 block, so that will be really a time where students will get what they need in their own personalized learning pathways. And we're really excited about our schedule this year. So I hope that kind of clears up some of that for parents. But that certainly is new to us. And so I'm glad that people have asked, and I'm glad I had an opportunity to show you, despite what Aspen says, this is what it really kind of looks like on the day-to-day. So again, that global applications, GA versus GA1, band, chorus, and strings go out for GA2. There is an opportunity for students to drop their instruments in the morning to the band room. So we have lockers in the band room. Mr. Krafka and Ms. Carr will be in touch more about what the procedures for that will look like. But in the morning, typically what happens is students enter, they walk down to the band room, drop off their instrument, lock it up, and then go to their homeroom. And again, some of those GA2s are a pilot for our program of studies. And so we're going to be soliciting a lot of feedback from your students and from you on what people liked, what people didn't like, as we pilot some of these ideas. Lunch and recess, where are they? Who are they with? So lunch every day is actually going to be supervised by classroom teachers. We felt that one of the things that was a plus of the pandemic was eating in small groups and having the ability to break off into different parts of our campus and eat outside. So we built our building schedule around the idea that their homeroom and team teachers will actually supervise their own lunches. So, and the recesses. We also hope that that maintains kind of that relationship. And students, let's face it, they have different expectations sometimes with their team teachers than what they would have with visiting teachers that are just there as a brand new person that's supervising them for lunch or recess. So we're hoping that that will lead to a lot of relationship building, a lot of joy, a lot of fun. Lunch is going to be in a lot of different places. So if there's inclement weather, we're going to be setting up a grid pattern of 6-foot buckets in our cafeterias where students will be able to eat at a physical distance and at a safe distance. But we're fingers crossed, legs crossed, toes crossed for a nice fall. We ate outside a lot in the spring. We were blessed with some really beautiful weather. And so we're hoping that we are going to be outside eating for as much time as possible. And they'll also be outside for recess. They're going to say that they don't need a coat, and they do. They do, because the kids that don't bring the coats are always shivering, even though they deny it. I always say to them, "Are you cold? You look cold," and they're cold. They're cold. So, I mean, that's a battle that, listen, I fight it on my own. But certainly, they're going to need some warm weather clothes because we are going to be outside as much as we can and as late into the fall and winter season as we can. If you need help with clothes, warm weather clothes, please just reach out. We have a lot. Everything that we do is grounded in our mantra, be cool, be brave, be a mess. We will talk more about this with you guys as the school year goes on. Your students will be immersed in lessons about how we relate our mantra to our behaviors and expectations within the school, within the first 6 weeks of school. So we really take each one of these pieces to our mantra, and then we relate it to something that we call our behavioral matrix that you guys will have a link to when I send this to you tomorrow. And we have really broken down for students and teachers what all of those positive expectations are for all of the locations in our building. So we're really asking that we, teachers to take one area at a time and explicitly teach and partner with students on what safety and cooperation and honesty look like in all of our BMS spaces. We hit this home really hard in grade 5 because this mantra and these expectations help guide our students through all the way through until they leave us for BHS. So again, this is really where everything is grounded. And you will be hearing a lot more about our mantra and Mantra Mondays, where we take pause and really dig into social emotional learning over the course of the school year. All right. I have just said a lot. But I know that there were a lot of things that people were wondering about. At this time, I would invite anyone to put into the forum any questions that you feel like maybe I missed or we need to dive into a little bit deeper. If I don't have an immediate answer for you, then I certainly will make sure that I communicate one in my email communication tomorrow. So again, I'm on a little bit of a delay, so I'm gonna kill time for a second and pause as I look and see if there are any questions coming from the crowd. I was hoping to keep it under an hour, and I still have 2 minutes to spare. So for those of you who know me, that is no small feat. All right. I'm not seeing any questions coming in. I'm hoping that maybe it's not an internet glitch, but that we gave you a lot of information tonight, and hopefully that will carry you through at least until next week. Oh, good. Here's what we might expect in general regarding homework. Great question, Annie. We do not have, I think there's a rumor out there because the kids ask this question too, that they come to the middle school and get bogged down with homework. And that's really just not true. We look at homework as an extension and opportunity for practice for students, but we also acknowledge that student afternoons, especially where we're getting out at 3:15 really, and home probably most kids by 3:30, 3:45, and then off to a sports practice, that there or dance or strings or a therapeutic group, like there's a lot of things going on in the afternoons for kids. And so we don't want to distract from that in 5th grade because that is such important social emotional work. Typically, there are a few things that are really a flipped design, we call it, in preparation for the lessons that are coming up tomorrow. Some additional practice problems, sometimes in math. Sometimes it's something that we want kids to start thinking about a project. But I promise you that our fifth grade teachers are very communicative about what the expectations are. And they will be sharing a lot of that during curriculum night. But please know that you will not be expecting hours of, if, let's put it this way, if your student is sitting at the kitchen table and they are upset at how much homework there is, then we're maybe not doing something right by them as far as what we're sending home. So it should be something that they're able to do independently. And if not, we would certainly want to hear from you. So please, please, please reach out if there does feel like there's a discrepancy in what your students are able to do versus, what we're sending home. Aaron asks, will the different teams have an opportunity to interact at recess? Yes. Right now we are working on some plans to bring the teams together in different ways for recess so that they can stretch out and see friends from other teams. So we are going to start that in probably a little bit more of a strategic way, but then eventually start to increase the capacity of our recess groupings so that they can see some of their elementary friends. Also, I'll say clubs tend to be a really nice opportunity for kids that might be missing a friend that they weren't placed with to hook up at the end of the day and take a class together. So that tends to be a really popular way to see people. All right, Justin asks, are buses announced for dismissal? How will my child know which bus to get on? Great question. So buses are going to be the same number in the morning as it is in the afternoon. So those stay relatively consistent, with the exception of if there's something that happens and a bus gets stuck somewhere or a bus is running really late, they might send a bus that's already back to the depot to come do our run, which is the last run. At the end of the day, most of the administrators and a great deal of teachers are on duty in the bus depot. So if you walk out the cafeteria doors before the turf, before that turf area, right off of kind of that outdoor learning space, that's where the buses pull through. They are all parked prior to dismissal. We go out ahead of the students and know exactly where the buses are. Students are encouraged to come and seek out a staff member if they're not sure where their bus is. And we make sure that that whole area is clear before we start sending the buses. Typically, we also have Dana Krushank, the director of transportation, with us as well, who can tell us exactly where the buses are. Very specifically, if they're running a couple minutes late, it's one of the perks of being on the same campus as the transportation department. So it's definitely something that we monitor, that dismissal and bus route, walking routes to those buses very, very closely, especially for fifth graders. And it's really all hands on deck until they start to get the swing of things on their own. So rest assured, Justin, we're not going to let any buses leave with fifth graders that are just not sure of where to go. You're welcome, Erin. Every single, we haven't, had any real left behind students, to my knowledge, ever yet. Every so often someone might be like, tried to run to Tasties or do something and they miss their bus, but we usually are able to call that bus back and they hop on it anyways. Jerry writes, if they are in strings, can they leave the instrument at school all week or do they need to take it home each day? Great question, Jerry. They can leave it. I had a conversation with a mom last night who said that their student has an instrumental lesson one day after school, and so that they might have to take it back and forth one day. It's totally up to you. They can bring it on Monday, they can leave it through till Friday, and then bring it home on the weekends to practice. Another popular idea I think that will happen is their class, that GA2, remember I showed you, is really near the end of the day. And so if they are bringing it home that night, and especially on Fridays, they can bring that instrument right back with them to their classroom so that when they are going to leave at the end of the day, then they can just grab everything along with their backpacks and whatever they have with them to take home and take it all with them right from their classroom. So kids get pretty savvy at knowing kind of, how to navigate that instrument. Especially the big instruments. If you're carrying a cello, then you figure out pretty quick how you want to navigate that. So they can certainly leave it for the week, or they can bring it home. It's a locked instrument. It's a locked instrument locker in a locked room. So they're very, very safe. You're very welcome, Jerry. Thank you. All right. I think that's all we have in the chat. It's 8:05. I just want to thank everybody so much for coming tonight and joining me live. Again, this presentation will be sent in an email that will have all that other stuff that I told you that I would send tomorrow morning. And certainly, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know if you have any questions beyond this. Oh, one last question. Sorry, Charlene asks. Oh, you're welcome, Justin. Charlene asks, when do students decide if they want to participate in strings band, etc. course? It's not too late. If your student tonight just says to you, you know what, I think I want to do chorus, just shoot me an email and I will enroll them. And it's as easy as that. So even if they've never picked up an instrument before, if they've never picked up, the role in something choral before, this is the time to try it. So we will make sure that your name gets passed along to our instructors. There's a rental, an instrument rental night coming up next week, and they can also help you figure out how to rent beyond that. We do have scholarships available, so please don't let that deter you either. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, grade 5 parents, guardians, families, and 5th graders. If any of you guys are watching, I'll see you guys all next week. And I thank you so much for being with me tonight. All right. Take care. Be cool. Be brave. BMS.